Metal Jesus here, and I am back again with Radical Reggie. How's it going, dude?
Great. And today we're going to do a PS4 Hidden Gems video. So how are you feeling about this, man? Do you think we can pull it off?
It's about time, man.
About time?
I play my PS4 all the time, and I am always looking for games, and this is going to be sweet, dude.
They're pushing out so many games for the system, man. There's definitely going to be a bunch of hidden gems. So let's take a look. All right, here we go. Start off with this game. This War Is Mine, The Little Ones. Now, basically, this is a survival game. It's based off a war that happens, and it talks about, it goes a story of civilian life. You know, civilians dealing with war, like stuck in the middle of it. So basically, war, tanks, buildings destroyed, fires and stuff. You're trying to survive, find food and stuff like that. So a group of survivors randomly, you're in basically a building. You have to find a way to survive, keep your momentum going, your morale, going, all that stuff. Basically, you need food. You need someone you need bedding. You need like how to cook food and stuff like that. So you have all that stuff, and then another thing is you have to go out at night because you can't go out during the day during the war because you could potentially be killed. So at night you go and hunt for food, but you have to be careful because if you leave someone behind in your camp, you could be robbed. And if you don't leave them with weapons and stuff. I got robbed, and they took food and everything. They didn't take much, but they got me though. So I was like, wow, I didn't know that. You have to make sure they're protected and everything because you could be robbed or whatever could happen. So, and a lot of times, sometimes the buildings aren't inhabitable. You'll eventually have to move out of them or whatever. So you have to have tools to kind of survive and everything. So it's a really cool game. But what this one does actually is adds another scenario where you get to play as kids. Only kids during the war, so the kids have to try to survive by themselves, and they don't have as many skills as the adults and everything. So it's a cool chapter to add to the game. Yeah. So
wow, that's cool. All right, well, I like it. Well, I think for me, I'm gonna go with Caladrius Blaze, which is a game that you originally told me about.
Yeah, and you pronounced it probably correctly, which is awesome.
So Caladrius Blaze I beat today. I played it for a while, but today was the day I sat down. I'm like, I'm beating this game. Oh my god, I love this shooter. There are so many great things about it. For one, there's a bunch of different ways to do your attacks. You can do the simple attack where you just hold on X and it just fires. You also have elemental attacks that recharge over time, which is awesome. Then also you can hold L2 and then do an elemental attack, and that's a powerful attack. You also have a screen clearing bomb. And there's multiple characters. So my favorite character to play in this is Caladrius, which is the Phoenix. And what I love about her is that she has the ability to have homing missiles. So her main attack is a homing missile, which means that you can play this game defensively. You don't have to necessarily try to aim. I believe she has like a shield that you can block all the bullets too. Yes. So yeah, super handy. But then again, if you're looking for something a little more traditional, there's a bunch of other characters as well. Boss battles are epic. They're beautiful. Very cool. And the music is outstanding too. I know. It's something you could bump in your car. A CD player. Really impressed with this, and I'm so glad that I got a physical version of it. So you're absolutely right, man. This is awesome. Definitely a must-have game. Yeah, cool. All right, is it my turn? Yeah, my turn again. So, all right, Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. All right. We'll move on to something else. Deadlight. Now, Deadlight came out originally on the 360, but it got a physical release for PS4 and Xbox One. Now, this game is pretty much I would say it's a platformer, but it's a modern platformer. It's based in Seattle, which is awesome. It's so cool, right? During the 80s, and there's some kind of outbreak happens, and it's kind of like zombie, essentially. More like a 28 days later zombie type of deal. It's stuff like zombies, they beat you up or something. I don't think they eat on you. But anyways, you're trying to survive, and this game is outstanding. The story mode is pretty much told with like graphic novel stills and everything. You'll try to survive. You're trying to find your family. You'll do a lot of platforming, going through sewers, jumping across buildings, just trying to get to a point where you want to meet your family. Because the main point of this game is you're trying to survive, and you want to get to your family. Your family's somewhere, you have to protect them. So Deadlight,
I would say a must-play, awesome game. I love it. Happy.
The graphics on this, I just think are fantastic. Like it has that 3D backgrounds, and
yeah.
But it also looks like Limbo, where it's
darkish and everything.
Yeah.
And another thing about the game is like when you're climbing fences or running there, your guy gets tired. So if you're hanging on something too long, you got to watch the stamina meter, or you could fall off a building or hanging or whatever. And if you're attacking an enemy, your attacks get weaker because you get tired. Which is another cool feature. But anyway. I suggest staying away from the enemies, hop those roofs, move along.
Very cool. Okay, let me see. Okay, I'm going to go here. Guiana Sisters, Twisted Dreams, the director's cut. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, do you know where this series originally started?
The Commodore.
Oh, I thought I was going to trick you with that.
I seen the original one.
Yeah, so back in, I think, 1987... when I had a Commodore 64, the original Guiana Sisters was the Super Mario Brothers for that platform. Because we didn't have a lot of really good, Nintendo-like, 2D platformers, and along comes the original, and it was amazing. Like, I loved it. It had great music. It was really fast-paced. Sadly, unfortunately, Nintendo was not quite as enthusiastic about it, and so they had to pull it from shelves. And now it's super collectible. Like, I'd love to get a physical version of the original.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's to say that this series has been around for a while. And so when I picked this up, I was like really excited.
Yeah.
Because this is a great game. I love this game. What I love about this is that you go back and forth between, I guess, the real world and a nightmare world, like on the fly, all the time.
Yes.
And also collecting the gems.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, that's all I love to do. I try to get them all.
And there's hundreds of them per level. And also, it'll depend. Like you'll have to be in one world, and then you'll instantly flip over to the other one, and you're constantly just going back and forth. And the world looks and changes.
It changes. Like in one world, the bridge will be closed.
Yeah.
But in another world, it'll open.
Yeah, and there may be something down there that you can need.
Yeah.
And so oh my god, I go like when I beat the level and I'm missing 10.
You go back.
I go back.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I actually completed the DS version because they had one on DS, and I did the same thing. I was trying to get all those jewels. Awesome game.
This is cool too because it also comes with some bonus levels. Like it comes with a couple extra Halloween and also Christmas levels too.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's an extras feature on here. So there's a bunch, and they're hard. Oh my god! Like, and that's the thing. This game is challenging. Like it is.
It actually it guides you through it though. I mean, like it gets challenging in a later level, so you don't have to worry about like a real hard spike in the beginning.
And you don't have to get all of the gems either. That's just simply there,
just something,
for the completionist.
Yeah,
really great game.
All right, next game. I'm gonna go with Kolat. Now, Kolat is based off of an incident that happened. I think it was back in 1959. Some researchers
in Russia.
They went to the mountains and they didn't have the proper gear to deal with the bitter cold. And so what happened was, we don't know exactly what happened, but they found their bodies, and they noticed that they tore out of their tent running from something. So they found 2 people that ran from something and died. Some people were in a tree or something like that. It was just really awkward and weird.
Right.
So what this game does, it's loosely based off the aftermath of what happened, of people going up there to find out what happened and everything. So you'll see it through the eyes of your character. And what's cool about this game is it's voiced by the actor Sean Bean.
Okay.
He kind of guides you through the game and talks and everything.
Like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's really eerie and kind of unsettling because you go out there by yourself in those mountains. I mean, the guy has your character has the proper gear, but he's going to see what happened himself, and it's really chilling because who the heck would do that? I mean, I would have a team of people with me ready to go or whatever.
I'd only do that in a video game.
yeah, exactly. So a really cool game. It's not very long, but it's very interesting. It's worth having in your collection. I think it's a collectible gem.
A lot of people have called this like a walking sim. Have you heard that term?
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about first-person games sometimes is looking around and taking your time to take in the environment. Like Deus Ex is a great example. I like that series because I do look in every little nook and cranny. And so for me, these type of games where they're walking simulators, I don't mind because I like getting my headspace there and pretending that this is really happening.
Yeah, and can you imagine playing this on VR probably?
No, I'd poop myself.
So awesome game. Check it out.
All right. Next up for me.
Yes.
Republic.
Yes.
And I bought a copy.
Yes.
So I originally played this on the iPad. I think that they did a Kickstarter and they were releasing the episodes on the iPad, and I bought a bunch of them. Really loved it on there. And then you told me about the physical version on the PS4. So the first thing that struck me, it's the entire game all on one disc, which is super nice.
Yes.
This is not really an expensive game. The other thing is, too, is that there is a bump up in the visual quality. Like, I noticed immediately. There's just better textures.
Well, how did you feel about the what version did you play first? The phone version? Or?
Yeah, I played the iPad to touch.
iPad, right? And were you sold on that one, or were you kind of like...
So I was curious about that because this game is originally designed for touch, right? And and essentially what you do is you are a person who's behind controlling like cameras and stuff like that, and then you're telling this girl how to get through the environment.
Right.
And the original game's designed for touch, like you would hold your finger on a camera to switch over to it. And so what they do in this, they basically just map out to different buttons depending on where you are. It felt completely natural. Like, I had no problem with it.
One thing you could tell about this game, though, is the developers were fans of the old school Resident Evil games.
Yes.
They loved those games, and you could totally tell when you play this game. I mean, the way the camera angles are. And
it works really well, too, because, the way the cameras are set up in the game is that you as the person controls it, you'll like fly over to another camera, and then you see it from another angle, which is very much like Resident Evil.
And the cameras are instant moments. So as soon as you lock in a camera, the game pauses so you can switch to the other camera in an instant. So you won't have to worry about like being fumbled in the camera angles or action happening.
The other thing I like about this, too, is that it feels like an adventure game because you can go into this mode, I forget what they call it, where a little eye opens up, and it sort of the game pauses for a second, and then that's whenever you can read people's emails. You can look at things on the wall, and
I just thought of something.
Game hints.
So certain people who backed it in the Kickstarter, you can find out, like, search guards, and when you search their ID, it shows the Kickstarter back, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, the real people. It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, a really well-made game. Not many people know about it.
Yeah, sadly, it's one of those games that's going to get lost in the shuffle. So hopefully you guys will find, pick this game up, because it's $20 at the most right now.
Yeah.
So,
you can get it digitally as well, too.
Awesome. Wait, my turn. Whoa.
Your turn.
All right, let's see what I'm going to go for here. Assault Suit Lioness.
I don't know.
Yeah. So
you know what I know by its original title? That is Target Earth on Genesis, which probably is not its original title because it's probably a Japanese.
They changed it. It's from the Assault Suit. I think this is the original name for that one. But anyway, this is an action arcade type like game. You're in a mech. You're trying to protect your base from invaders and stuff like that. Basically, from the story I remember reading about, I hope I'm right, is Earthlings that colonized are kind of like went out in space to search for other places to live. But when they come back to Earth, there's an attack happening. So you're trying to protect your base and everything like that. The game has a lot of levels are different. You'll go from a level of trying to protect a base. Next level, you're trying to protect the cargo, get the cargo safely, protect the cargo from invading armies and stuff like that. And then one level, you'll be trying to destroy a spaceship in space, which is pretty awesome. So it really changes up the action. This game is came out only for $20, so it's definitely affordable. It's got 8 levels. It's definitely one of those games if you want to just play something real, like a throwback, I would say.
That's so cool, though. I mean, I did not expect a game like this to come out in now.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a throwback. Obviously, it's so cool, right?
Yeah, I love it, man. It's definitely a hidden gem.
Cool. All right. Well, speaking of hidden gems, for a long time, this is not a hidden gem if you've been watching this channel, but a lot of people still don't know about Shadow Complex, and this is the remastered version that came out on the PS4. Now, I was curious, because I know about this game. I love this game. And so I was on the PSN network to see how many people had downloaded and rated it. It wasn't very high.
Yeah.
And so people still haven't played this game, and I'm like, we're covering it.
Yeah.
So tell me, so you had not played the original, right?
No.
Okay, so what do you think of this? I
thought it was outstanding, man. It really is like one of those what you call Metroidvania type.
Yes.
I say Metroidvania, but for the fans of Metroidvania. But anyways, it really pulls you in. It's an awesome game, like a modern Metroidvania type game. I mean, the story is compelling. It starts off strong, which it keeps you interested.
The level design is really cool.
Yeah.
Right?
One thing about me when I played the game, because I noticed you could do like a close-up attacks, like close quarters combat.
Oh, right.
I play the game silly, which you'll probably see in the video. Like, just walk up on enemies doing drop kicks.
I do it all the time.
You do? Like, I don't even shoot them.
It's so much fun. Like, it never gets old, right?
Yeah, it doesn't, man. The drop kick is like my favorite move. Like, you imagine somebody getting hit with a drop kick, they're done, dude. So it's hilarious. But awesome game. Definitely a hidden gem. If you can't get a physical copy because it might be expensive, go download the game. Just play it. You will love it.
Yeah, there's a lot to this game. And one of the things I love about it is that, because I just recently beat it again when I got this, was it's all one map, and there's tons of collectibles in there. There's, even when you beat the game, there's a reason to restart it, because there's so much upgrading that you can do to your character that I immediately wanted to restart again, because I was like, okay, like, you know, I'm not maxed out yet, and that's a sign for me of a good game, because I rarely do that. But this is a fun one, and it's not too long either. Like, your first playthrough will be about 5-6 hours, you know, 8, you know, something like that.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, definitely, because I don't want the game to be too long, because you know, you got to move on to the next game. You know how it goes sometimes. Yeah,
cool.
All right. Anima Gates of Memories. Now, this is a throwback to action games, pretty much. It's like a 3D action game where you play as the girl Anima. Make sure I said her name right. And she has this book and everything. You can do combos like the Devil May Cry and everything like that. It's a really cool game. The way the game looks, it has a really dark look to it, but in a way, an artsy look. It really looks, the graphics look outstanding.
It reminded me of Final Fantasy a little bit. You know, it has kind of the open areas.
Yeah, castles and stuff like that. Yeah. It's a really good game. One thing I wanted to say about it though is it actually comes with a manual and a soundtrack, which is awesome. You know, that's when companies do stuff like that. This is like published by this company called Badland Games, and I guess they're based in the UK. They're bringing like indie type games to physical release, which is awesome. But definitely one of those games. It feels like I'll give an example. It's like Devil May Cry, but a little bit less, not all crazy like combo like. You're using spells and stuff like that, and you can switch between characters while you're playing and everything, which is awesome. Big boss battles, big castles, discovery. You really feel like you're in a fantasy world with this game. Definitely a hidden gem. And there's proof, because they said it's a hidden gem too.
I had never heard of it until you showed it to me, so that's a good sign. Okay. I think the last one.
Oh my god, the last one that I said the best for last, my favorite for last at least. Dex. Now, Dex is... okay, if you guys have seen Blade Runner, I've just seen it recently, about 6 months ago for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The people who made this game, I think they're called Dreadlocks, they are definitely fans of Blade Runner.
And Cyberpunk.
And Cyberpunk games. And that's what this game is, pretty much what it is. There's even a character in the game named Decker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dead serious.
Oh,
his name is Decker. It's awesome. So basically, the game starts off, you're in a Blade Runner type world, like we were saying, neon lights and all that good stuff. You wake up, some people are after you, and there's a hacker talking to you. He says, hey, you got to get out of the building, they're after you, and he shows you got to hack the elevator door, which the guards are already at. So as soon as you do that, you stop them, you got to hop out of the building. You're running across buildings trying to escape, and you're trying to get to this place called Fixer's Hope. That's where you meet Decker at. But
it's seen as an action RPG, so
level up and everything. You can hide behind like crates and stuff, the past enemies if you don't want to fight them. She has like a lot of moves and everything, which is really cool. And she can fight, man. Like she almost could block any attack. Like, it's weird. Like, you push I think it's the L2 button. You put your arms up, and she could like block all these crazy attacks, except bullets and stuff like that. You gotta move out of the way, and then critical attacks, you gotta try to avoid those too. But has a great soundtrack, lots of dialogue. The dialogue is like a throwback of old games, the way they present it on the screen. Like, it's a lot of it, which is good.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, if there's a story to back that up, I don't mind at all.
And then also, you could do like sneak attacks, like you go up behind someone and just choke them out, kind of Metal Gear style and everything like that.
So I have a question for you. I'm noticing a lot of these say Peggy on here as opposed to
I know what's the
ESRB or whatever it is.
Okay.
So obviously a lot of these are coming from Europe. Are these PAL? Okay.
Well, a lot of these PAL, because a lot of indie games, I guess it's hard to put them on physical release here. It costs too much money. I don't know what they have to deal with in the US. And they probably don't want to go through that headache. Right. Being that the PS4 is region free, you can just reach out and go and buy them from over there. Just have them sent to you.
And so where are you getting these from?
I usually get them off of Amazon or eBay. It's really easy.
Do you switch over to like
whoever has a better deal, whoever has better shipping? I mean, some people there's a guy in New York that sells these games, and you get them faster because he's in USA. But just different people. I don't know exactly where you could buy them from, like directly, like where they.
And where are you hearing about the physical versions of these? Because a lot of these will come out digitally, but then, I mean, how'd you know that Dex there was a physical version?
I found out from my buddy online. He does a lot of games that are getting physical, indie games that are getting physical releases and everything. So he does a little channel and everything where he brings it out. Alex, man, thanks a lot for telling me about a lot of these games, man. This is for you. I mean, I wouldn't know a lot about a lot of these games if it hadn't been for him, man. I mean, he's like a fan of indie games, and he knows a lot of these AAA titles aren't really up to standard. So
he's looking for more indie games.
Yeah,
because
trying
to get the physical
release. You're getting complete games.
Yeah.
You're not worrying about patches or something being added later to like what we're going through these days.
Absolutely, because usually the digital version of something I don't consider I own it. I don't include it in my collection. I don't put it in my software that I use to track my games.
Yeah,
it feels like a rental because the hard drive could die. Maybe they'll take it off of the license will expire and you can't download it anymore.
It's happened, and one game that happened with it I know is Outrun.
Yes,
I love that game
too.
And Afterburner, like they're gone. So I'm like, okay,
yeah, that's cool.
Choose. But anyways, guys, Dex and Republic are my favorites out of this. Definitely pick those up at least, and I hope you pick all these up because they're awesome games. Like I said, I really picked a lot of these games. We picked a lot of these games because we want people to reach out and not just depend on what's being only released in America.
Right.
PS4 being region free. Look out for stuff like that. Look for other stuff. Look for indie games getting physical release, because one thing with indie games is they're released digital. They could be they're easily forgotten.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a good point. They come and go pretty quickly.
Yeah, so
Well, that's cool. Well, we'd love to know. So this is our first PlayStation 4 Hidden Gems video, but we know there's a bunch more out there. So we'd love to know what other hidden gems you think we should get. Now, let's not just keep it physical. Let's say whatever, right? Yeah. Because I'd still like to check out a game on digital, like if I got it cheap enough. You know what I mean? If it's a good game, it's a good game. Like we'll check it out. Maybe limited run games will pick it up as a physical.
Yeah, definitely.
You never know.
Awesome. So
that's what happened. That's what happened with Shadow Complex. It
was funny. You were just telling me about that when we were doing a fitness video, and next thing you know, it got.
I was like shocked. So you never know if some company will pick it up. So
yeah,
let us know.
Yeah, and in the comments, just let us know if there's more hidden gems you guys that think that we should maybe do in a future video. If we do one. Yeah,
unless it's like Resident Evil.
Oh yeah, Resident Evil. Maybe next video we can add that one.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on and doing this.
There we go.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching my channel. Thanks for subscribing, and take care. Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Today I have 8 more hidden gems for the PlayStation 4. Now these are relatively unknown games, but definitely worth playing. Let's take a look. We're going to start with a game that has a bit of an odd title. That is Remothered Tormented Fathers.
Where did you get this picture?
Isn't she your daughter? Celeste, or has you called her? Jennifer?
I asked you a question.
Back of the picture says Jennifer.
There is no Jennifer!
You thought I was stupid, didn't you, Mr. Felton?
You play as Rosemary, a character that looks an awful lot like Jodie Foster, don't you think? But she's investigating the disappearance of a young girl. Now that leads you to a spooky house where everything is not quite what it seems. Now I mentioned this game plays a lot like Clock Tower. If you're not familiar with that series, basically you don't have any guns or really deadly weapons to use. Instead, in this game you just have single-use items that you can use to distract your enemy. In this game, you need to be stealthy. You have to listen for clues in the environment to know when to move and when to hide. And sound really plays a big part of this game, and it's the key to surviving. This game is a little on the short side. It lasts about 6 to 7 hours, but I feel like it doesn't really overstay its welcome, and it's part of a planned trilogy of games. And look at those graphics. This house is super creepy to explore. This is a really fun survival horror game, so definitely check it out.
Reach my land for me, and then a whole new world is calling us.
Speaking of games with weird titles, here is Rabby Ribby. Rabby Ribby. I hope I'm saying that right. But basically, it's a 2D platforming / Metroidvania style game. You play as Irina, a rabbit that was turned into a human girl with bunny ears. Sure, why not? And along the way you meet a fairy who helps you as well. I mentioned this game is very Super Metroid or Castlevania-like, and that's because you'll find areas that you can't access until you upgrade your weapons or your abilities. I really like the boss battles in this because it feels unlike anything I played in a 2D platformer. It switches almost to like a bullet hell shooter in that they have patterns that will fill the screen that you need to dodge. But really this game is all about fun, and it has just enough challenge to keep you going.
Don't get me wrong, this is a surprisingly deep and fun 2D platforming game, despite its silly premise. Next up is Ziggurat. This is a first-person dungeon crawling game, although it's considered to be inspired by two classic first-person shooters like Heretic and Hexen. Back in the 90s, those two games really stood apart from the rest of the first-person shooters released because instead of primarily using guns, you use magic to destroy your foes. In Ziggurat, the levels are procedurally generated, meaning no two playthroughs are the same. And the game is somewhat roguelike in that you are meant to die. A lot. But even in death, you make progress upgrading your characters, unlocking new abilities, and growing stronger with each playthrough. This reminds me of another game I reviewed recently called Immortal Redneck, but honestly, I like this one a bit more because of the focus on magic. Now, I want to mention that this trend towards randomly generated levels is fine, but wouldn't it be great to get a proper single-player campaign with designed levels? I kind of miss that. But this is a game that you can basically play forever. Next up is Shoe. This is a 2D platformer in a gorgeous 3D world. So I guess that technically is a 2.5D platformer? Sure. And like in so many other platforming games, you run and jump across the landscape, but in this game, you start off with the glide ability. For instance, in the beginning, you can glide across large gaps, or you can even ride the wind. And then, very quickly, you're able to use special abilities gained by saving villagers who follow you. An example early on is that you get a brute who can help you smash through things. Then you meet a villager who can get flowers to open and close their petals, providing pads for you to land on and continue your journey. Later on, you'll get an animal to ride, as well as villagers that allow you to walk on water, and much more. There are a bunch of villagers to unlock, and they all help you with ever-changing levels and challenges. To me, this game feels like a mix of the Rayman games as well as Owlboy. It has a great art style and fantastic gameplay. It should not be missed. Oh boy, here we go. So this game is called Everything. Yeah, Everything. And I gotta be honest with you, this is a really weird game. But stick with me here because it turns out that everything is something very special. All right, so what exactly is this thing? You're probably looking at this going, what the heck is this? Well, that's because this game is not really a game, it's more of a simulation that attempts to do something that very few games do. And that is explore everything in the universe and understand how all the pieces relate within it. And I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, when you first fire this up, it kind of feels like a tech demo and kind of looks like it. But slowly the game reveals its purpose. See, you shift perspective from a very small animal, like in this instance here, a pig, down to a single blade of grass, or maybe you'll shift that perspective up to a frog or even a rock, or you can even go subatomic. But that's not it. You can even shift your perspective to a tree, even a landmass, a planet, or a whole star system. But why would you do this? Well, the goal of the game is to unlock and document all the things within the Galactic Encyclopedia, and then have conversations with them and understand their relationship between each other. As if that wasn't enough, then while you're playing, the game also plays audio quotes from a philosopher named Alan Watts. He wrote some of the most respected books on Buddhism and the Zen lifestyle.
If you think that you are only inside your skin, you define yourself as one very complicated little curlicue, way out on the edge of that explosion, way out in space and way out in time. And then we cut ourselves off and don't feel that we're still the Big Bang.
Listen, this is all very heady stuff and certainly unlike anything I've ever played before. You know, at first this seems kind of dumb. I mean, it really does. You're just kind of like, what the heck is this game? But after a couple minutes, you get into discovering all that you can find, both big and small, throughout the universe. There's nothing quite like this game, so if you're looking for something a little unique, definitely check it out. Next up is Redout. Some of you might have seen this on store shelves, but I get the feeling it hasn't sold very well. Redout is a futuristic arcade racing game that is similar to classics like F-Zero or perhaps Wipeout. Basically, you are a pilot in the far future taking control of an anti-gravity ship that hauls some serious butt. And yes, this game is all about speed. It's important to know that the console version is called the Lightspeed Edition. That's because it includes all 3 DLC packs from the PC release, bringing the total number of tracks to 35, plus you get 25 ships. The game also supports 6 players online and split-screen multiplayer. And like I mentioned, there is a great sense of speed here, and the frame rate never really slowed down on my PlayStation 4 Pro. I mean, the graphics look pretty great. And like so many of these games, you level up your pilot as you race, unlocking new weapons and enhancements to your ship. There is a lot of content here for arcade racing fans like me, so definitely check out Redout.
I think I'm gonna make it.
Moving on, we're going to take a look at The Long Dark. This is a first-person survival game that chooses to focus on realism as opposed to just horror. You play as a pilot who crash lands in the frozen Canadian forest with your ex-wife after a somewhat mysterious global disaster. Now, the developer actually advertises this game as the most realistic survival game ever made. And the way they do that is by having the player focus on things like body temperature, how many calories you burn while doing a particular task, your hunger, your thirst, your energy level, the outside temperature, the clothing you wear, all of that. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's this attention to detail that makes every single decision you make that much more impactful, to make sure that your character just lives one more day. But how is the game? Well, you learn to gather supplies, heal wounds, make fires, sterilize water to make it drinkable, cook food, and much more. And other games have done that before, but not to this level of detail. This really is unlike any other survival game I've played. It's realistic, it's tense, and it's immensely satisfying when you're smart enough to live just one more day.
Whatever's in this case, Astrid was ready to die for it. I hope she hasn't already died for it.
Yay! Next up is Full Throttle Remastered. Yes, some of you are going to be a little bit surprised to see this on this list because, well, the original Full Throttle is considered a PC masterpiece back in the day, but I wanted to remind people that this excellent remastered version of the classic PC game actually exists on consoles. You play as Ben, the gruff leader of a biker gang called the Polecats, who gets wrapped up in a corporate conspiracy with Corley Motors. See, Corley Motors is the world's last motorcycle manufacturer in this somewhat futuristic world, and they're switching production from bikes to, well, okay, I won't spoil it for you.
You know what might look better on your nose?
What?
The bar. Now don't mess around with me.
All right.
The original game is known for great graphics, memorable characters, and excellent voice acting, plus a really fun plot and classic gameplay to match. And I have to say, this game is perfect on consoles because the interface by this time was refined to be more accessible to a wider audience. I mean, no longer did you have to click on verbs or nouns to perform actions like you did on the original Maniac Mansion. And this remastered version is basically the same game, but with crisper HD graphics and cleaned up audio.
Who are you?
Maureen, remember? If that's too hard, maybe you should just stick with Mo.
This an authorized Corley Service Center?
Full Throttle is one of my favorite adventure games of all time. It's a classic for a reason, and if you like adventure games or you just miss the old LucasArts days, definitely give this a try. You will not regret it. Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and today I am back with another PlayStation 4 Hidden Gems video. Man, it has been a while since I've done one of these specifically for the PlayStation 4. It's actually been since 2018. Can you believe that? Man, how time flies. Now, I know the term hidden gems can be somewhat of a confusing term, and the way I look at them is that I kind of look for games that are relatively unknown, that are good, that most people don't know about. So that's kind of how I build this list up. Also, not all of these games are going to be exclusive to the PlayStation 4, although some of them definitely are, but some of these have come out also on PC or maybe the Switch. I'll put that on the little title card that comes up for each game, so you'll know. And the good news is most of these games, maybe all of them, will play on your PlayStation 5, which is cool. So if you happen to have one of the newer consoles, well, you can go back and play some of these games, often with maybe a higher frame rate or maybe a higher resolution. So let's get started. So the first game I want to talk about is called Alienation, and this one happens to be a PlayStation 4 only game, at least as of the making of this video. Now, as you can see here, this is an isometric twin-stick shooter created by the awesome developer Housemarque. And I wanted to include it in this video because I've used some of this gameplay footage in some of my other videos when I'm talking about twin-stick shooters or arcade games that I like, and inevitably people will always ask me, what is that game? It's one of those games that definitely, stands out. It looks gorgeous, but also people who are into twin-stick shooters or just action games, they want to know what this is, and I'm just so happy to be able to talk about it now. Now, what's cool about this game is that Housemarque has crammed a ton of stuff into this. So it's not just a, typical simple twin stick shooter, although there's definitely elements of that. But as you see here, there are also a lot of RPG elements to this as well. You have multiple character classes that you can choose to play as. You have tons of weapon and armor upgrades. And as you see by this footage here, I'm currently going at it alone in this game, which is nice. You can play it as a single player game and go through the entire campaign, shooting a bunch of, aliens and enemies and stuff like that. Or really, this game, I think, is best if you can get 3 other, friends to join you. Simply because there is just so much going on, and honestly, it can be overwhelming if you play this with just one person. So it's nice to get 3 other people in there to basically watch your back. And originally the multiplayer was online only, but they have released several updates and patches for this to add local co-op as well, which is awesome if you have a friend over sitting on the couch. This is definitely a really cool game. As you can see here by this footage, it looks and plays awesome. It's a gorgeous game. So if you haven't checked out Alienation, give it a shot. Next up is an arcade racing game I've been wanting to talk about for a while now. That is Onrush, and this is also available on the Xbox One. So basically what's going on in this game is that you have 2 teams pitted against each other, each with 6 racers on each side. And what's cool about this game is that there is no finish line. This isn't like a traditional racing game where you're trying to get to the finish line. Instead, what you're doing is you are constantly battling each other for points, just trying to outmaneuver and basically best the other team. And there is always action in this game. That's one of the things that really sets it apart, that even whenever you crash and you are brought back in, it's almost like you're just being added back into like a Call of Duty multiplayer match where you're just dropped right back into the middle of the action. You are never racing alone in this game because, like I said, it's just a constant circle going around trying to just basically get as many points as possible. I was playing this game, capturing the footage the other night, and it really struck me that this is kind of like the ultimate version of Burnout's Road Rage mode, where you're just basically trying to take out as many of the opponents as possible, and you're constantly boosting, and it's just absolute insanity 24/7 in this game. It's out of control. It's so much fun. So if you like arcade racing games and you kind of miss this style of them where it's just over-the-top fun, constant action, man, you have to pick up a copy of Onrush. It's fantastic. Next up is a game I'm very excited to talk about in this video. It is called Blood Roots. So basically what's going on in this game is that you are this guy who is seeking revenge on the person that left you for dead. Actually, you're seeking revenge on the guy and everyone associated with him. And you just go on this murderous rampage. And when I say anything, I mean it. You can pick up splinters of wood that have fallen from a house. You can pick up wagon wheels. You can pick up cabbage or carrots to throw at enemies. But then you also have a bunch of the traditional weapons like swords and axes and things like that. And each of them will have their own statistics and uses both in combat and also outside of combat. So for instance, here you see that I've picked up an oar from a rowboat. And yeah, you can spin around and whack dudes with it and take them out. Or you'll actually need to use that to kind of pole vault over these big gaps or to get to higher levels and basically continue on, with your quest. One of my favorite things is to just jump on a barrel and then mow over dudes. So yeah, it's endlessly creative with what you can do in this game. It's super fun to kind of just mess around with the world and see what works and what doesn't. Sometimes you're surprised. Sometimes you just laugh out loud because it's completely silly. Now, the game is difficult and you are meant to die, but thankfully the reloads or restarts of the level are pretty much instantaneous, which is very nice. It's the kind of game where if you die, it's because of something that you did or didn't do. It's never really cheap or frustrating in that regard. So definitely check out Blood Roots. It's awesome. Next is, Next Machina. This came out on the PlayStation 4 and also on Steam. And this is another game by House Marquee. This is yet another attempt that they had at making a really awesome twin-stick shooter, just like the first game we talked about called Alienation. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this one, because it seems a little bit maybe redundant here having two twin-stick shooters by the same developer in the same video. But this one's very different, and sometimes it's actually kind of polarizing. Not everybody likes this game. And what I find is that typically people go one way or the other. They either like Alienation, but not this one, or perhaps you're like me, where actually I prefer Next Machina a little bit over Alienation. And as you can see by this footage here, it's a very different graphic style as well. This game plays a little bit more like, say, Robotron in the arcades or maybe Smash TV. Just has a little bit more of an arena style vibe to it. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why I like this game. It's a little bit more pick up and play. There's not quite as much going on, as far as the RPG elements to it. This game really doesn't have quite the RPG elements as Alienation. Plus, as you can see by the footage here, it's a showcase for really cool voxel technology. The way that those pieces break apart in this game, it's just gorgeous to watch. Also, this game has a dash feature that is key to staying alive in this game, where you see me doing all the time here, where basically you have this dash that it's a move that you can do. So when it gets really overwhelming, you dash out of the way and then you continue on just blowing everything up, and then it basically slowly builds up. It's only a couple seconds long, so you can't do it all the time. It's very strategic, but you're doing it every probably 5 or 10 seconds. So that's kind of one of the things that really sets this game apart from some of the other twin stick shooters that you may have played. So yeah, if you like twin stick shooters, you got to check out Next Machina. And now for something completely different. This is a game called Late Shift. And as you can see by this gameplay footage here, this is a full-on interactive full motion video game. So first of all, I have to say, like many of you, I've grown sort of nostalgic for those FMV games from the 90s and early 2000s. These were all the rage back in the day when CD-ROMs and DVDs were just brand new in all of these different consoles and, PC. And, some of them were better than others. Most of them were crap, to be honest, or painfully bad. But, every once in a while, a game comes along that kind of resurrects that style, and Late Shift does that, and it does it really well. Now, unlike other FMV games, especially some of the classic ones, the prompts that come up where you have to make a decision for the character and move the story forward. In this game, it doesn't pause it, and it used to do that in a lot of games. And so that's something actually I thought was pretty cool about this, because you really have to stay on your toes. You have to make those decisions quickly, or the movie will just continue on without you. It basically, I'm not sure which decision it makes, probably just the first one, but it's cool because, again, it's always moving forward. Also, it looks like a decent budget TV show, and it has some really good acting and some interesting characters. But I guess I should probably talk about what the actual game is about. So you play this parking lot attendant who is on the late shift, hence the name of the game, and then you are unwillingly involved in this high-stakes heist that involves some stolen goods, a crime ring, and also maybe, depending on your decision, a potential love interest. Ooh. And this game gives you a decent amount of decisions to make. It actually gives you 180 things to choose from as you are playing the game, so you can really guide your character and the story along. So the way that works out is that you can beat this game in about an hour and a half, which is the typical length of a Hollywood movie. And then what happens is that there are 7 different endings that you can play with. So yes, the game is fairly short at only an hour and a half long, but you can keep replaying it, making different choices that you might not typically make the first time through to see where that leads you. It really reminds me almost of when I'm playing Mass Effect, where you have the choices to be nice or not so nice, or maybe a jerk, or maybe, make a decision that is logical or sometimes illogical, and just kind of see what happens. So on my second playthrough, that's exactly what I did. I chose all of the options that you really shouldn't play, or choose when somebody's pointing a gun at your face. And it was really funny and very satisfying to see just where the story went when I just played it wrong. It was awesome. So yeah, if you're like me and you've been missing these full motion video games, definitely check out Late Shift. Next up is a game I've been playing a lot lately. It's called Moons of Madness. So this is a first-person survival horror game that has you playing as an astronaut that is stationed on Mars that may or may not be going slightly mad. And so as you can see by this footage here, you are going around this Martian space station here, both inside of it and also out, doing some light puzzle solving like you would in, maybe like, say, a Resident Evil game, especially the newer ones. But again, it has that survival horror element to it. And what I like about this game is that it starts off fairly kind of realistic. Obviously we're not on Mars yet, and I don't really know what it's like to be an astronaut, but it has a lot of the things you would do as an astronaut, where you're kind of fixing equipment, you are adjusting your air that you have, your reserve air when you're out on the Martian landscape. And then it slowly kind of reveals itself. It kind of slowly gets worse and worse to the point where it's a full-on survival horror game. Now, one of the criticisms I have of this game, and it's a slight one, but I do want to mention it, and that is the performance on the PlayStation 4. It's not great, and actually I'm using it and capturing this footage on a PlayStation 4 Pro, and every once in a while the frame rate does dip down. I think it's probably because I'm loading something or there's a delay or something like that. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not super sensitive to that kind of stuff. It doesn't really affect the gameplay, but I just want to mention it because some people definitely don't like it when, the frame rate dips, and it does that occasionally when there's a lot of stuff going on. But I definitely like how this game went from kind of just mundane to, wow, what the hell is going on? And I really appreciated that. It didn't waste a whole lot of your time, and it got really interesting. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't played this game, but if you like H.P. Lovecraft, I think you're going to dig this. Next up is Kentucky Route Zero, the TV edition, and this is a game that I kind of went back and forth as to whether I should include it in a Hidden Gems video, because I do feel like that this game is somewhat known. I had heard of it, but I hadn't played it, and when I did a bit more research, I realized that, yeah, I know that it's kind of known, but also I don't think a lot of people had played it, myself included, until I made this video. And once I did, I was like, yeah, this is worthy of this video. So what's going on with this really bizarre game? Well, you are an antique delivery guy that's trying to get to a specific address via this fabled Route Zero in Kentucky. So yes, the title of the game is very accurate, although how you get there is really bizarre. Now, I read that the creators of this game were very inspired by David Lynch. I think they are probably inspired by, say, a fever dream that they maybe had. Maybe they were delirious with the flu or something like that, because, for such a simple premise, you do some just really odd things in this game. You're cruising around and meeting these interesting cast of characters that may or may not want to help you with your goal. It just seems kind of random and, again, very David Lynch-like, where you're going, who are these people and what are they doing all the time? It's, like I said, it's really bizarre. And you can really tell that by the footage here. I mean, it looks sort of like a traditional point-and-click adventure game, but you don't have the traditional puzzles that you would in those kind of games. Typically, you're trying to find an object to unlock another one that progresses the story, and that's not necessarily the case in this game. I mean, essentially what you're doing is walking back and forth from character to character, and then most of your choices that you have come in the form of dialogue. Now, what's wild is that there's not necessarily a right or wrong dialogue choice. It's just that often whatever you choose will potentially change the story or maybe how a character interacts with you. And so when I started playing this game, I thought, am I doing it wrong? In these type of games, I'm so used to trying to figure out, okay, what does the developer want me to do to progress the story? But often in this game, again, there isn't a right or wrong answer. And so you almost have to kind of lay back and just sort of let the dialogue happen, let the characters talk. It's a really beautiful, bizarre, sometimes kind of slow-moving game, and it's probably not for everybody, but man, is it memorable. Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and I am back with another PlayStation 4 Hidden Gems video. I've already done 3 of these videos in the past covering a bunch of great PlayStation 4 games, so if you don't see what you're looking for in this video, well, you might want to check out those. I'll put a link down in the video description below. But for this video, I chose 8 games that pretty much flew under the radar a little bit. However, here's the thing. A few of these games did come out on other systems. However, the reason why I'm including them in this video is because, well, for the most part, they got a physical release on the PlayStation 4. So if you're a physical game collector like me, often the PlayStation 4 version is the one you want to seek out. The other thing I want to mention is that all of these games play on the PlayStation 5. As a matter of fact, all of the footage that you'll see in this video is me capturing that footage, running these games on a PlayStation 5. So let's go ahead and check out the games. The first game I want to mention is called Gravity Rush 2. This is a sequel to a game that originally came out on the PlayStation Vita handheld. Now that was a beloved game on that system with a really unique premise. You play as a girl that can control gravity on this grand adventure in this fantasy world. I guess I would describe this game as one part platforming and adventure game, and then one part collect-a-thon, and then maybe one part superhero game. But it's unlike any other superhero game that you've probably ever played. The one thing going into this game is that you need to understand that the controls definitely take some getting used to. You're not necessarily controlling where the character flies to. Instead, you are controlling where she falls to. Again, you're controlling her personal gravity. It's a very subtle thing, but one that can kind of take a bit of time to wrap your head around. Thankfully, the lock-on system works pretty well. It'll auto-target the nearest enemy or an object that you can interact with. Still, in the heat of battle, especially if there is a time limit, it can be pretty frustrating trying to deal with the weird kind of controls and also the camera. If you haven't played the original game, you might be wondering why I'm recommending the second game in the series, but really, you don't have to have played the original to enjoy this one. Yes, the original was remastered also for the PlayStation 4, but this game acts both as a sequel and a prequel in that it delves into the origin story of the character, and so you're not really missing much. It's also a long game at over 20 hours for the single player story, and you can easily double that if you take on all the side missions and you try to find every collectible. And I have to say, going back to capture this footage, jumping off a building and then taking control of the gravity never gets old. This is a really fun and unique game, and yes, a total PlayStation 4 hidden gem. Next up is a game called Steel Rats, and this is an example of a game that also came out on the Xbox One, the Switch, and the PC, but it's on the PlayStation 4 where they released a physical version. Well, at least outside of North America, so you will need to get an import copy of this like you see here. Think of this as a post-apocalyptic motorcycle trials game, but you've also got guns, weapons, and upgrades. And this is quite an unusual game. I mean, it's not going to be for everybody, but I love games that try to do something kind of different, and this one is pretty fun, and it's definitely different. Now, as you can see here, it's a mix of a driving game and also a 2D kind of platforming game. And because of that, the controls take a little bit of getting used to. I mean, it throws a lot of options at you fairly quickly. Almost, I would say, too quickly for some people. For instance, you have buttons that will do boost. You have buttons for a quick little turnaround. You also have buttons for attack. There's another button for a jump. There's a surprising amount of stuff happening in this game. And you'll notice that I like to mention how long it takes to beat a game because, well, I mean, these days pretty much everybody is short on time to play games, and often shorter games can actually be a little bit more appealing. So this game here, Steel Rats, can be completed in about 5 or 6 hours, but there's enough collectibles and hidden things to find throughout the game that you can easily double that time. Considering that this game typically goes for about $10 or less if you get it digitally, or maybe about $25 for the physical version, that might be a good deal for you. But really I wanted to mention this because not a lot of people know about this game, and I actually kind of dig it, especially, again, when you get the controls down, it's really fun. Now, is it a perfect game? No. It definitely feels like an indie game that could probably use a little bit more polish, but it's way better than you might expect, and again, definitely a hidden gem. Next up is a game called Gundam Breaker 3. So this is a really cool Japanese mech brawler with some great features. So the premise of this game is that you are a real world kid living in Japan that joins a team of Gundam collectors who then battle it out in this virtual arena with these little plastic mech toys. And so at its heart, this is a brawler slash beat 'em up, but it's got a ton of RPG elements to it. You can upgrade and configure your mech pretty much any way you want to. We're talking you can put a new head on there, arms, legs, shields, weapons, both melee and long range. You can change the color, the skin, the stances, the actions that they do. It's almost never ending. And then what you do next is take these little plastic mech toys into battle against your foes and try to kick their ass. Now, I know what you're thinking watching this gameplay footage here is that it looks really chaotic, and yeah, it is, but there's a lot going on here. You have short and long range attacks, you've got heavy and light attacks, special attacks that have cooldown timers, plus you've got fellow computer teammate members that you can issue commands to, and then you also have healing abilities and just a ton more. Now you can, on the easiest difficulty setting, kind of just button mash your way through these battles, but you'd really be missing the point. There is a lot of real-time strategy happening here, and you need to be on your toes. This was released around the time that the Vita version came out. That's actually the version that I played first. And this has a really cool feature here where you can do cross saves. So you can upload your saves to the cloud and then download them and continue playing on your PlayStation Vita. Now, I just tested this again and it still works, but I'm not entirely sure how long this is going to work because it's Sony and they could probably just, you know, abandon that feature at any moment. But when it works, it's pretty cool. I'll admit, I'm usually pretty skeptical of games that are this chaotic, but man, I really grew to love this game. Now, it's important to know there are two versions of this game on the PlayStation 4. There is the Break Edition, which includes all the DLC. You might want to snag that one if you run into it. Also be aware that there is a sequel called New Gundam Breaker that fans do not like. Now, I haven't played it myself, but just be aware, it's kind of confusing. You kind of have to pay attention to the title here because you don't want to get that version. You want to either get Gundam Breaker 3 or the Break Edition. Next up is Ketsui Destiny. I originally talked about this cave shoot 'em up back in a pickups video a while ago, and in the comments I actually called it Ketsui Death-tiny because that's how it's spelled. And I was corrected in the comments. People are like, no, it's actually meant to be kind of a Japanese joke. You're supposed to do it with a lisp and it's supposed to be very tongue-in-cheek. So just be aware, I guess it's called Ketsui Destiny. Either way, this is a banger of an arcade shoot 'em up. Now, if you've never played one of these cave shoot 'em ups, just know that there is a lot going on here, way more than just trying to mow down as many enemies as you can. First up, this game has 5 stages as well as mid-level bosses and then a big boss at the end of each level. Plus, you have 2 ships to choose from, each with their own shot patterns and speed of movement that you can kind of tailor it to your specific playstyle. But the reason why I want to talk about it in this video is because, well, this is a great release of the game because it includes several different modes to suit pretty much any experience and skill level with people who have played these for years, or maybe you're just new to these kind of bullet hell style shooters. Super easy mode is great for beginners. It'll slow down the action a bit and help you kind of learn the levels and the bosses. Arcade mode is for the normal experience where the difficulty is raised but still very fair. Then there's the Ketsui Destiny Arrange mode, which introduces new scoring and also this little destroy bar at the bottom. In this mode, depending on how leveled up you are and how well you're doing in the game, well, things like your shields and auto bombing will happen if you're hit. There's also a custom mode that allows you to tweak the game to exactly how you want to play it. What's cool about these releases are the side panels that are giving you real-time information about the game that you're currently playing. On the left is information about scoring that is happening real time. So like what multipliers are being used, maybe how close you are to the enemies dropping these multipliers, damage effects, and a ton more. And then on the right, you see a map of the entire level and where you're at during your play. I can see gamers trying to maximize their scoring by maybe recording your gameplay, and then you could go back and analyze and see exactly what you need to do to improve kind of moment by moment. Also, this makes it pretty interesting for someone who is watching you play, like, say, sitting on the couch next to you, or maybe on a live stream where they could kind of get more information about what's happening in this crazy shoot 'em up. As you can tell, this is an excellent release for the PlayStation 4, and the fact that we got it in physical, well, that's just one more reason why you might want to pick it up. Next up is an arcade racing game I'm very excited to talk about, that is Hot Shot Racing. This comes to us from Sumo Digital. They are an excellent developer who made all those really great modern outrun games, you know, like 2006, Coast to Coast, all of those. They're the same developer that made this. You'll immediately notice that the graphic style here is very retro inspired. It's got like a low polygon style to it. I really dig it. It's funny watching this because, you know, all it really needs is to have like the Tesla Cybertruck as an unlockable. That'd be pretty funny. Drifting for boost is the name of the game here, and it feels really good to drift in this game. It feels almost a little bit more analog than, say, Outrun. And I mean, that's a high praise because I think the Outrun games do it extremely well. But here it's a little even more controllable. You feel you just have a little bit more control over your drift in this game. You can really finesse it. And you see those 4 bars down in the right-hand corner. So that's how many times you can boost based on how much you drift. So you want to build that up as much as possible. Use it at very strategic times to, you know, launch ahead of the other cars. And again, it all feels very good because that developer has so much experience making great arcade games. Now, this game also came out on other systems, including the PC, Xbox, and Switch. But again, it's the PS4 physical version that I typically see all the time, and it's not very expensive. So I wanted to include it here. I do see the physical Switch version occasionally, although not as often and not as cheap. So if physical collecting is important to you and you love great arcade racing games, you might want to snag the awesome PlayStation version now.
With all due respect, could you not?
The next game I want to talk about is a VR game, but before you tune that out, because maybe you don't own a VR headset just yet, you might want to wait a second here and let me describe this really cool game to you. This is a game called Paper Beast, and basically this is kind of like an alien planet adventure and puzzle game. And when I say that the game puts you on an alien planet, I really mean it. There is going to be very little here that you're going to initially be relating to. It's really weird right off the bat. The first thing you notice are these organic creatures that seem to be made entirely out of paper or ribbons, yet they're alive, they're thinking, and they're trying to guide you somewhere. And let me just tell you, a flat 2D YouTube video does not do this game justice. This is an incredible game to just stand in this space and explore this world. When I first got into this, I just stood there and was just in awe. Now, originally this game came out on the PlayStation 4 and was for the original VR headset, and it plays great there. But the good news is, if you happen to have a PlayStation 5 and you happen to have the new PlayStation VR 2 headset, this game is enhanced for that as well. So actually the footage here that you're seeing is the PSVR 2 footage. But again, just be aware that the game looks stunning on both. The puzzles are very physics-based, often dealing with utilizing creatures to help you out, maybe trying to divert liquid from one area to another, or build up a platform so you can reach a new area, or just trying to solve kind of obtuse, bizarre puzzles to advance the story. And that's the thing about this game, is that it feels very alien. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you what you need to do. You're just meant to kind of explore, poke around, and try stuff. And like many VR games, this one doesn't overstay its welcome either. You can beat this game in about 2 to 3 hours if you know what you're doing. Maybe a little bit longer if you're like me and you get stuck and you need to kind of experiment a little bit. When people talk about how VR can give you an experience that you just can't get in a traditional 2D game, this is what they're referring to. This is such a strange, beautiful, even sometimes kind of emotional game, and I highly recommend it. Next up is a 2019 remastered version of Medieval. Now, I know some of you are going, wait, this is a remake of a game that was released back on the PlayStation 1. And while I think that game found its audience, I also think back on the PS1, it was a little bit of a hidden gem. At least all these years later, not many people talk about it. And so many of us were very surprised when Sony brought it back all these years later for the PlayStation 4. This is a very old school feeling game. It's basically a hack and slash game with a lot of adventure elements. You play as a resurrected warrior who died in battle 100 years ago, probably a little bit too soon, but you're brought back to fight this evil wizard that's taken over the land. There's a variety of weapons here, both up close and personal, as well as ranged attack weapons that you can quickly switch between on the fly. You have a shield you'll need to use to block attacks, but you also use that to solve some of the puzzles. And here's the thing, this is based on a PlayStation 1 game, and so it does have a camera that feels kind of old school. Sometimes you can move it around freely, but then other times you'll be locked into a certain direction or looking a certain way. It can be kind of weird and frustrating to modern gamers, so just be aware going into it, that's what you're dealing with. However, I think the updated graphics look pretty good. I mean, you see it running here, it's a nice looking game. And there's a fun sense of humor here too, which I really appreciate. I mean, it's a game I think many of us were very happy to see that got its remade, remastered look to it. So it's not going to be for everybody, but I do think it's a total hidden gem, especially on the PlayStation 4. Next up is The Order 1886. So this is a very early PlayStation 4 exclusive that, you know, at the time of release did have a lot of excitement around it, especially around its amazing graphics. But ultimately, it didn't sell very well, and it's a real shame.
Everyone, one of our escapees is a half-breed.
At the time, this game was considered way too short for a full-priced AAA release. It's single-player only, and the story can be completed in about 6 to 7 hours, and there's no real replayability. And so I get it, you know, you pay full price for a game and it only lasts for, 6 or 7 hours. Yeah, you might be kind of disappointed. However, now that the game is older, you can easily find this for like $5 or $10. So that's a reason why I think now it's absolutely worth your time at that price. As you can see by this footage, this is a third-person cover-based shooter that takes place in the year 1886 in London. And you play an officer of Knights of the Round Table, and basically you're trying to control these rebels that are taking over London and causing all sorts of problems. But what's crazy about this game is that they're working with werewolves and vampires. And you guys are looking at the footage here, and as you can see, it's a very cool looking steampunk adventure game that has some truly excellent graphics. There's just so much detail around every corner here. The downside with this game, of course, is that it's just short and very linear, and unfortunately there's a lot of quick time events, which was kind of common at the time. However, the story and the graphics and also the shooting mechanics, I think, more than make up for those complaints. But like I said, at about $10 for a complete copy today, why not give this game a chance? It's pretty cool. So there you have it, guys. That is another PlayStation 4 Hidden Gems video. Now, there were over 3,000 games released on the PlayStation 4, so we've only begun to scratch the surface here. So I would love to know down in the comments what games you think are hidden gems on the PlayStation 4, and maybe I should cover them in a future video. Please let me know. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now, one of my favorite genres of video games is the arcade style of shoot 'em ups, and we got a ton of them on the PlayStation 4. And even better than that, a lot of these were released physically, as you see my collection here. And so in this video, I want to share with you some of the highlights from my collection. We're going to go very quickly here. This is meant to just be an overview, and we're going to start with a Korean bullet hell style shoot 'em up game called Shikhandu Soul Eater. Now, what's cool is that this got a very nice physical release. It has a reversible cover. It comes with a manual. There is a sticker in here. There's a soundtrack. And this game just has a beautiful art style. It definitely sets the tone here when you fire up the game. Although I have to admit that it looks like the background appears to be kind of a lower resolution than the foreground. So that's something where Maybe it didn't get quite the upgrade that you were hoping for, but man, the gameplay is definitely solid here. This is one of those shooters where they have bullet grazing, where you have to fly really close to enemy bullets to fill up this soul gauge that allows you to basically unleash this super attack if you want to go for a really high score. So it's got this risk versus reward thing going on here, and you know, when you take into account that sometimes the screen is just full of enemy bullets, this is definitely a difficult shooter, but the nice thing is that there are plenty of difficulty options. So if you're not very good at these kind of games, if you just kind of want to learn the levels, you can dial it down a little bit and still have a ton of fun. And by the way, I should mention that a lot of these shoot 'em ups are not exclusive to the PlayStation 4. This is just the version that I happen to have physically, but a lot of these also came out on the Xbox One, the PC, and also the Switch. And what's nice is that almost all of these are compatible with the PlayStation 5. Actually, a lot of the footage that you're watching in this video was technically me playing it on a PlayStation 5 because it can play all these PlayStation 4 games, which is really nice. Next up is a game I was really excited to get is Battle Garega. This is the revision 2016 version. Now, this game was originally released in arcades back in 1996, and it was ported to the Sega Saturn about a couple years later. And it is one of those notoriously difficult shoot 'em ups, but what's great about this version is that they really bring a lot of options here. Again, if you are new to the series and maybe not an expert in these type of games, but you still want to have a lot of fun. Right off the bat, I just love the music in this game. It's one of those things where it just gets you seriously pumped up to play it. I also like how the controls are always displayed to the left of the gameplay. That's actually something you don't see in a lot of these type of games, and I found it to be very useful, where you always knew exactly what would do a bomb, or you know, what would be a fast attack, things like that. So again, very handy, very, very useful if you're just starting out with this game for the first time. Every time I go to an arcade, I always gravitate towards the original Raiden arcade machine. I love that game. Pretty much every game in the series has been a lot of fun, and you see Raiden 5 here. I think for me, what I like about this is obviously the gameplay is very solid, but also the weapon power-ups are just really fun. Each one of them, each color that you collect is just a completely different way of playing this game. For instance, you see the kind of bendy shooter one here. That's not the technical term here, but that's the one where it just kind of wraps around and hits all the enemies on the screen. I think that's just such a cool weapon, and one of them that I always go back to. Now, one of the things that's kind of annoying about this game is that there's just constant voice chatter throughout it. It goes on all the time, and I don't even know why they added it. I guess it's for a little bit of flavor, maybe to kind of like draw you into the story, but honestly, I just completely tune it out, but I do find it a little bit annoying.
You continue on to the northwest and head towards Michelle Defense Base, right? WY short.
Captain, an emergency call from Michelle Defense Base. A huge fleet of contaminated weapons.
Next up is a game that I'm not entirely sure I like, but I want to mention it here because it is kind of unique in the genre. That is called Pararumi. Now, this at first glance may look like a typical shoot 'em up, but it's different in several ways. First off, its theme is kind of unusual in that it is, I guess they call it sort of like a retro, futuristic, sci-fi, South American thing going on here. I've never seen that before, and you know, it's pretty cool. I like that it's somewhat different. But its real standout feature is that it has 3 very unique weapon types mapped to 3 buttons on your controller that you can use at any time, and they each do something a little bit different. And you'll notice that there is a color associated with it. So for instance, red, blue, and green, and also enemies are also of the same color. And so the way that it works is depending on the color type of weapon that you're going to use against the color type of the enemy, whether it either does more damage or it sucks off a little bit of charge to it. Basically, you're kind of going back and forth between making color combinations with enemies and sort of what they're susceptible to. Depends on how you play this game. Does that make sense? And honestly, it's a little hard to wrap your head around, especially in the beginning of this. It's not something that you're just going to jump into and just get right away. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit different than the normal, I definitely think you should probably check this one out. Here's another one I was very excited to pick up, and it's something that I hadn't heard of before, but it turns out to be a really awesome shoot 'em up called Ketsui Destiny. I think that's how you pronounce that. So this is another shoot 'em up that has a lot going on here depending on kind of your skill level at playing these games, which again, I find really awesome. So this has got like an arcade mode. It's got like a super easy mode for people who are just trying to just jump in there. It's got an arcade challenge. It's got a bunch of other modes in here. So there's a lot to like about this game. I definitely think it's just one of those classic shoot 'em ups. It's got great graphics, really solid gameplay. It's one that I keep coming back to time and time again. As a matter of fact, on my secondary channel, I have a playthrough of this game. So I'll link to that up in the corner. Here's a game that I picked up fairly recently called R-Type Dimensions EX. And what this is basically a brand new kind of 3D HD remake of the first two R-Type games. Now, the standout feature in this, it's so cool, is that you can swap between the original pixel graphics and the newer graphics anytime just by clicking that triangle button on your controller. And the R-Type games have always been fairly difficult for me. I'm not sure exactly why. I'm not the biggest fan of horizontal style shooters, so maybe that's something that's just, I don't know, it's something I'm not very good at. So I definitely appreciate that this version has an infinite mode if you just want to basically play it casually. Now, it doesn't necessarily lower the difficulty, but it does allow you infinite lives, infinite ships, so you can basically just power your way through it, which I appreciate. But I definitely love the feature that allows you to just go back and forth between the new style graphics and the old ones. I think that's really cool. Any game that has a remaster like this should give you that option. Next up is a game called Cyveriar Delta. So this was originally released in arcades back in 2000, and this also has that buzz or bullet graze mechanic that I was mentioning earlier. And I kind of admit, I like this gameplay mechanic, but it can be very stressful, especially when a game like this is just throwing huge amounts of fast-moving bullets at you. And also a game like this feels like it's very much about memorization, you know, because again, it's just, you need to know sort of where you can camp out and survive all of these levels. But, you know, that's very typical of shoot 'em ups anyways. But yeah, it definitely makes this game very tough. Also, I don't really think this game looks particularly good. I mean, it's got kind of low quality 3D graphics, which is expected for a game that was originally released back in 2000. But I just want to mention it because it definitely is just a little dated. Next up is a game that Reggie told me about, and I'm really glad I was able to hunt down a physical copy of it. That is Esp Raid Psy. So this was originally released in arcades by Cave back in 1998, but this port here has been done by M2, which is a company that's been doing a lot of these modern ports to the Switch and the PS4, and generally they do an extremely good job. So in this game you have 3 characters to choose from in the beginning, but there is an additional one that you can unlock, and each one of them has a very different shot type. And being that it's a Cave shooter, it just controls and feels really good. I've mentioned it in the past that Cave makes some of my favorite shoot 'em ups. There's just something about the way that they look and feel. They just have that something that I really love in this genre. And speaking of awesome Cave shooters, here's another one I picked up fairly recently, is Dangun Feveron. This is such a cool shoot 'em up that's unlike kind of any others out there. Cave is really kind of messing around with different ideas here, and basically the whole premise of this is that it's based on or inspired by funky disco music and that kind of lifestyle, which again is so unique for the genre. And so there's definitely kind of a fun and lighthearted vibe to this game, and I love how this box version of it, this physical version at limited run, really celebrates that as well. But it doesn't sacrifice anything in the gameplay. As you see here, it is still hard as hell. This is a very fast, fun shooter, but again, something kind of unique and unusual. And speaking of shoot 'em ups that are kind of unusual and definitely stand out, here is Sisters Royale. Now, what's interesting about this game is that you play these different sisters. There's a bunch of them. I think there's like 5 or 6 that you can choose from, and each one of them has their own attack style. But what makes this game kind of unique is that you are running along the ground. And because of that, there are different environmental challenges that you need to navigate. So for instance, you'll run into things that will block your path and you'll have to go around, or there will be ice that you'll slide around and not have a lot of control over your sister, or wind will blow you left and right, things like that. So it's stuff like that that makes this game kind of unique. Also a little bit annoying, but again, if you're looking for something new and different and fun, yeah, definitely check this out. Speaking of games that are doing something a little bit different and stand out from the pack, well, you're going to see it here. It's so obvious. That is Sign Mora EX. And this is just a rarity here because, as you see, it is one of the most beautiful horizontal shoot 'em ups that I think have ever been created. The amount of artistic, graphical fidelity here is something you just do not see in this genre very often. And so what's cool is that it is a full 3D game, but it retains that classic gameplay on a 2D plane there. So, you know, it plays very similar to games like, you know, R-Type and things like that. But then every once in a while, the camera will just swoop out and you'll get this 360 vista. It'll wrap around a boss and show you what you're going to be taking on, but then it'll zoom back in for the actual gameplay. It's stunning. And it plays with the idea of time. So every time that you destroy an enemy, you're earning a little bit of time. And you don't want to run out before the end of the level. So that's kind of what it does. It entices you to keep, you know, just destroying enemies as quickly as you can. But then what's cool is you can also temporarily slow down time if things get a little too hectic. And it has a story with voice acting and characters that you can kind of get into. But again, honestly, I typically skip it. I just want to get right to the meat of the game and start blowing some stuff up. Here's a game that I'm not entirely sure if I like it or not, but I want to mention it here. It is called Dimension Drive. And as you see here, it's got this very comic book sort of look to it. It is a space vertical style shooter, but its core mechanic here is that it focuses on teleportation. So essentially what's going on here is that you can instantly go back and forth between the two battlefields on the left or the right. And you do this all the time. So you'll run into a situation where you need to shoot something that's on the left, but then you need to warp over to the right because maybe there's something in the way, or basically to progress in the level, you need to hop back and forth. And I gotta be honest, it feels kind of like a gimmick and maybe unnecessarily complex. It is, I mean, it's well designed, and I think that once you play it for a while, you can kind of get into the groove. It's an interesting idea, and I definitely applaud people who try to bring something new to the genre, but I don't know, it's not one of my favorites. Next up is Caladrius Blaze, and this is a game that has had a couple different releases. Originally, it was released in North America on the Xbox 360, but then it was also released on the PlayStation 3 in Japan. Now, what's cool about this particular version here is that they've included on it all of the DLC. So this is kind of like a best of version of it here. And as you can see, it's a really fun vertical style shooter. Reggie and I played this several years ago and just had an absolute blast, no pun intended, playing this game. Highly recommended, a lot of fun. Sadly, not every great shoot 'em up got a physical release, and the number one game I'd love to see get a physical release, it's so good, is Jamestown Plus. Now, if you haven't played this game, it is so good. And again, I don't think it got a physical release anywhere for whatever reason. And it's one of those games that I think that could eventually just disappear because it only was released digitally on consoles. And that really sucks, man. It kind of bums me out. And what's cool about this game is that it takes place in an alternate history kind of cyberpunk version of Mars. So it's got a little bit of story there, not enough to kind of annoy you, but it's just enough to kind of be interesting and unique. And as you can see here, it looks and plays so well. It's one of these games where, you know, I wish somebody like Limited Run or PlayAsia or somebody like that would just license it and put out a physical version of it. I guarantee you that shooter fans like me would snag it up in a second. It's a classic. So anyways, guys, that is some of the highlights of the shoot 'em ups that I have for my PS4. It's one of those things that makes the PS4 so amazing. Now, I know that a lot of these came out on other systems, but again, being able to get these physical for the PS4, they play in HD, they look beautiful. Oh man, it's just one of my favorite things to collect for. And you may have noticed that a lot of these I actually ordered from sites like PlayAsia.com, which makes me think that, you know what, there's gotta be even more of these over in Japan. I bet you, if you were to take a trip to Japan right now and look at their PS4 Shoot 'em Up collection, I bet you there is an insane amount of games that are probably sitting on those shelves, just ready for the picking. And like I mentioned, almost all of these are also available on other systems, especially the Switch. It seems like the Switch also got a ton of these as well, although not all of them were physical, but a lot of them were. But I would love to know down in the comments if you think there are other physical shoot 'em ups I need to get in my collection. Please let me know down in the comments below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Today we're going to do a quick unboxing of two pretty rare and unusual PlayStation 4 controllers that were found in Ontario, Canada by a viewer of the channel. His name is Adam. He found these and frankly was just trying to get more information about them. He didn't know anything about them and was having a hard time finding information online. And so he thought maybe if he sent them to me and we did a video about them, perhaps we could find out a little bit more. So the story is that Adam responded to a local ad to buy one of those 20th anniversary PlayStation consoles that came out a couple years ago. And when he showed up at the guy's house, he's like, hey, I've got this box here of some extra PlayStation 4 controllers that I'll sell you as well if you're interested. And I guess the story is that this guy had a guy living at his house that owed him rent, and in lieu of paying rent one month, he basically said, hey, I'll give you these controllers. And so that's what Adam ended up buying. And as you see here, they are internal developer controllers given to employees. You see them here. So a couple things that are fairly unusual about these is that you'll notice that they have silk screening right here on the touchpad, and we're going to dig into those a little bit here, a little bit more. Notice that this one says Consumer Services 2015 Team Edition, and then over here it's 2015 Operations Team Edition. And if you flip it over, they also have custom graphics and also text here specifically for, in recognition of working at Sony and working on the PlayStation. That's pretty cool. And it makes sense because, like I mentioned, that these were picked up in Ontario, and that just happens to also be where Sony's Canadian headquarters are located. So the person who originally got these either worked at Sony on the PlayStation launch and some of the aspects of it, or perhaps they knew somebody who did. So you can see right here, again, it's got a big thank you right here to the customer services team, which I've looked up, and I guess they are in charge of dealing with consumers who maybe need a repair on a console. And I guess these would be given out to their top performers. So I don't think they necessarily went out to the entire team, but to some of the, kind of like an award for being a really good employee. This one here, Operations, is pretty interesting because I assume that it's more of the back end, perhaps, of maybe someone who's running the, in the IT department or in the server department. But again, I don't know the internal workings of Sony, so I can only guess. You'll also notice on the bottom here, it does say, not for resale. Now, I've seen some talk online of people who suspect that maybe that silkscreen is not actually part of the controller itself, but part of the packaging. These are sealed right here. You'll see that they have actually like a retail seal right there. But Adam did say that it's okay if I open them up just to verify and maybe see if there's anything else that's kind of unusual on the inside of them. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and obviously be very careful about that. Yeah, so as you can see here, the silk screen is right on the touchpad. And I love how that's kind of like a wire look, almost like a VR or something like that. It's pretty cool. Same thing with this one. I like this one right here because, as you can see, it shows people and employees essentially propping or holding up the PlayStation logo, which makes sense because this was for the Consumer Services Edition. So these would be people who would, you know, be dealing with customers as well as, you know, repairing consoles. Now, over the years, we have seen other PlayStation 4 developer controllers pop up. Specifically, I've seen a God of War one show up. But these are kind of unusual because we don't really find them much online, especially this one right here. So I'm not 100% sure exactly how rare these would be. If they were only given out to top employees and maybe only in Canada, they could be extremely rare. But it's really hard for me to tell, you know, based solely just on what I've seen online. I'm really hoping actually that people will, you know, potentially chime up and post down in the comments, and especially if you've worked at Sony and you perhaps have one of these or something like that. By the way, these are not mine. I'm not keeping them. I simply just asked, you know, if I could do a video on them because I thought they were kind of neat and kind of interesting, something you don't see all the time. So I will be sending these back to Adam. Again, thank you, Adam, for sending me these. If you want to reach out to him as well, you can either, he's going to be checking the comments of this video, but I'll also put a link to his website down in the video description. Because yeah, I don't know, they're kind of cool. It's interesting because collecting controllers has been a thing lately, and so these are probably some of the more unusual ones, which is always really fun and interesting to discover. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching.